All right, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. It's the Christmas special. Me and Jack Butcher are here. Jack, what's happening, geezer?
Good morning, mate. How are you? Well, good afternoon. We're continental, we're transcontinental this episode.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in London. Jack is still, you're in Nashville right now. Trung is in Vancouver, but unfortunately couldn't make it today. Not feeling 100%, so hopefully he'll be able to join for the next one. But Jack and I are going to hold it down today for the Christmas special. We've got a lot to talk about, mate. I'm in London. I was just telling you before we started recording, the heater is on behind me. So if you see me jump up at any point, it's because I'm sweating my ass off here. And yeah, the energy prices are crazy. It's really funny. The two things I've noticed since I've been back. One, the TikTok algorithm slaps. You know, it's got all the UK content, all the music content that we're always discovering from the outside, but it's just hitting my feed now.
That's mad that has so much of an impact, your location, not just your history. That's mad. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't realize that either. I remember when I was like in Argentina and in Mexico, you start seeing obviously a lot more local stuff. And in a weird way, you kind of get to see the culture in, you know, obviously online TikTok culture only, but you start seeing like the way people are communicating stuff and stuff that's top of mind. Yeah.
Because other networks don't do that, right? Other social networks don't tend to do that.
I don't know if they do. Yeah, I'm not. Maybe they do a little bit.
My Twitter
is
looking the same. My Twitter is looking the same in London, mate, as it is here. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think it's because TikTok is so much more like interest based versus the people you follow.
Follow a graph.
Because it's for you page. Yeah. But anyway, so. Yeah, and I was just mentioning my brother-in-law. He's got like his like a little display which shows the price of like electricity and stuff every day because
real time
of the day.
Like
yeah,
that
so
Warren Buffett McDonald's ritual right there. He's like
But we were just saying, man, it's crazy. They've got like a modest normal flat, and it's just like 10 a.m. and it's like £20 already just spent in the day, just sitting there in the cold, pretty much. So yeah, it's quite interesting being back.
$2.40 a gallon. I just drove past this morning.
Do you know what's crazy? I have absolutely no context to if that's really high or really low. I'm assuming it's a lot.
That's cheap.
What's it normally? It's cheap. What's it usually?
Well, like peak of this year was probably $4 down there, $4.50 maybe.
That's wild.
In New York, it's probably
Shitcoin levels.
7, something like that. Exactly, yeah. It's California, 8, 9, I don't know. But
that's
it's
wild.
Coming down. We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, mad, man. Anyway, so, yeah, I've just been back here for a few days. I told you I was at my boy's stag do. And for our American list, there's a house phone going off. This is how you know I'm back on. Someone better pick it up. We can leave this in.
Yeah,
Who's ringing? I don't know. It's probably my brother because I literally told him don't ring between these times. He's probably calling right now. But anyway, so yeah, someone picked it up. Well, editor, we can keep that in. Let's keep it real here.
Definitely keep that in. A bit of culture in there.
Yeah. So a bit of culture in there with the house phone. Anyway, but yeah, so the stag do, we were going to talk about it just because, I mean, stag do for people who are in America is a bachelor party. So my boy Muz was getting married. He lives in San Francisco and he went to Oxford Uni. So he brought all of us back. He didn't even organize it, but it was his cousin. It's about 10 lads in this ridiculous house, as you do. And it was kind of in the middle of like Oxfordshire. And we went in for the night to Oxford, had a good time. Absolute scenes though, like it was just straight up uni vibes, like all the drinking games from uni, like, you know, where people like putting their thumb on the table and it's like last person puts the thumb on has to drink. It's like they did a boat race, which for people who don't know is like 2 teams, people have to down a drink, like a pint basically on both teams. And then there's all these rules like, you know, don't say someone's name, you can't point at them, all these ridiculous things, right? But it's like you're 19 years old again. And it was pretty fun, man, just hanging out with a cool little crew. So, but you were saying you've had a few stag do's in your time as well. What about your stag do? Did you do one, I assume?
I went back to London for it, yeah.
What was any stories you're allowed to share?
Man, we started this, I might have started with my stag do, the lads I went to school with. We started this thing where, you know, people do like ridiculous stuff, like put people in wedding dresses and stuff like that. Yeah. It's actually not that funny because people know they're a stag, right?
Yeah.
So we came up with this thing where you just buy someone really shit clothes So it just like goes right up to the line where people guess whether or not they dress
So it's
themselves.
not a wedding dress though. It's just
It's just like you go, just buy like really dodgy jeans, like an ill-fitting like dress shirt, maybe
were you
put a
wearing
tie in there.
leggings from Primark? What did they get you to wear?
It was like a set of, it was like they probably spent 12 quid, including shoes on the clothes. And you're going into like these nice bars in London, people just like double take it. You're like, what has he come as? But they don't know that you're on a stag. Like, it's more embarrassing for you because people think that's how you dress as opposed to you being in costume. Yeah. So that took off. We did that a good amount. And then the other thing on my stag, we did, they made me all these speeches. Like, they wrote out a speech for every pub that we went in. And I had to like stand on a stool in the pub and give the speech.
Jesus Christ.
And they would do like, it was like speeches about the pub with like really glaringly wrong facts. So you would go
like
into
it was about the place itself, like
about the pub you're in. So there's all
hilarious.
these locals in these pubs, and I'm standing up shouting all this like wrong. Man, it sounds so stupid now I'm saying it, but man, it was so funny.
At the moment,
like
that's kind of what you do. Do you find? Have you been to many bachelor parties in the US? Because I find my experience is like, everyone gets the piss taken out of them, but in the UK specifically, it's extra. Like, the culture is, it's very self-deprecating, obviously. So you're just trying to make that person look like a fool. Like, this guy was, I think it's like right for me to say because people are not going to see the videos, but they're literally around the fireplace, asked questions from his missus, and it was basically like, how well do you know your missus? And we threw in a few made-up questions in there that are embarrassing too. But when he got it wrong, he got waxed like on the because he's a very well-groomed individual, so it was a lot of weird stuff like that. But anyway, don't want to bore people with the whole story, but yeah, it's Christmas time, everyone's in a really good mood. We just bought a Christmas tree here, getting in the spirit, and ready to celebrate the rest of the year. We've also got an episode coming up next week, which is year in review for people, and hopefully Trung's able to join for that one. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the Twitter external links debacle, which we'll be talking about what happened there real quickly. But more importantly, Jack's got some cool ideas for Twitter Blue. What would make a Twitter Blue paid subscription worthwhile? Some ideas for Twitter on the monetization front for creators and stuff like that. And we'll probably bring in the stuff that's been going on at Gumroad with their fees going up. But before we do that, mate, the World Cup final happened this weekend. I'm assuming you watched it. We were talking. What a crazy final, right?
Mate, incredible advertisement for the game of football, I think. The neutral fans winning in that one, right? Like,
how many times did they say that?
Unbelievable.
The crazy thing is, go on.
I was just going to say, how many World Cup finals? I mean, I've been alive for, I don't know how many, 8 or something, roughly. Obviously about 3 that I was actually conscious for and was paying attention to. And I always kind of remember the energy of a World Cup final just being like this cagey, 1-0, 2-1.
Yeah, everyone's being scared to like attack. It's very like tactical versus like going
at it end to end. Like, I had some people around on Sunday afternoon. They're like, it was like game of basketball. Like, that's what it felt like to the American audience. Like end to end, play to play.
Well, especially because the first 80 minutes I thought was actually, I won't say boring, but they were it didn't feel like a contest. And you're like, oh, okay, great, Messi's going to win it. Like, everyone's kind of happy for him. And then I literally was half asleep because I had slept about 2 hours because of what was going on the few days before. And I was just falling asleep, basically. And then I went in the other room, started streaming it on my phone, and then 2 goals in 3 minutes. And then it was absolute chaos.
Mate.
The comeback, man. I mean, incredible. Mbappe coming back, Messi coming back, then the goalkeeper antics at the end. Emi Martinez, like kicking the ball away, getting a yellow card, but then saving the penalty. Yeah. I mean, pretty incredible, the celebrations. And I definitely think it was the best World Cup final of all time. And I will say, honestly, probably the best World Cup I can remember in terms of the games. Like, there were so many epic games, like comebacks and stuff like that.
Upsets and
exactly. After we did, the episode with Joe Pomp, great, one of my favorite episodes we've done in a long time, actually, talking about all the problems in Qatar and stuff. I will say there's that stuff that's come out after that. I would just say that it seems like everyone I know is gone, and people I've heard had a great time, and including people who just said like it was even the drinking thing. They said it was quite family friendly. You know, there was a lot of upside to it as well. People felt like welcome. The locals seemed to be amazing. They were giving out tea after every game and like being, great hosts. And yeah, so all the other stuff aside, which we've already covered at length on that episode, it does sound like it was a big success. And it was great to witness that, man, on the weekend. It was something I won't forget for a long time. All right, mate, let's get on to it. So Twitter, this has been a bit of a shit show, man. So where do we start with this? It only happened a day or two ago. I think the Twitter team, Twitter support, put out a message. I'm just pulling up the actual message here. It was something along the lines of a new policy. All right, now it says this page does not exist. I don't know if they took it down already. All right, well, maybe they deleted the tweet. Long story short, they were going to ban external links to other social media platforms, but more importantly to me, other platforms like Linktree, and basically like saying if you're linking out to other sites, we're going to not only like not show it to more people, which is already what happens, right? If people don't know, the algorithm doesn't share that to as many people. What's called organic reach is like 10x less or even more. But in fact, you could actually get banned your account could get shut down essentially because of that. And Elon Musk kind of had some clarifying thoughts. But straight away, everyone's like, hey, look, this is stupid. First of all, the social media platforms, it wasn't very consistent. I didn't see TikTok in there. There were in the list of sites.
Where does the line get drawn, right? YouTube, at podcasts.
Exactly. And that was one thing. And then the second part was like Linktree as an example. Like I've used Linktree. Our nia.show website is basically a Linktree. And it's like, I guess it brings up the bigger question, right? Like you've built a real business using Twitter. So I want to ask you, how did you feel when you read this news? And like any other thoughts on it?
Yeah, I didn't think of it as massively problematic for me because I don't do a lot of cross-platform stuff. But I thought about NIA initially of like, well, if we can't push out to Apple Podcasts, YouTube, like if you take a couple of logical steps from here, and it's like, this is basically showing the intent that you want to keep all Twitter's traffic on Twitter. And I think most people use Twitter as a vehicle to, professionally at least, promote something that exists elsewhere, right? You can't build unless your only product is the content, is your tweets, you can't build a business on Twitter. Even someone like Trung, who is like an incredibly prolific Twitter personality, creator, whatever you want to call it, lowercase j, journalist, all of the monetization of his work happens off Twitter. It has to get people to click through to read the newsletter, and the newsletter gets sponsored and blah, blah, blah. And that to me is one of the major incentives for Twitter as a platform.
It's pretty much one of the only real incentives that isn't just dopamine hits from likes and followers. And I'm not saying that alone is bad, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think that is a great point. It's like those are really the top 1% of people that create the stuff. And I'm not talking about quality here. I'm just talking about pure numbers, right? 99% of people are just observers of a platform. And if you take away their incentive for building or contributing content to the platform by preventing them from benefiting from any of the secondary effects of having this reach, which is newsletter subscribers, or people click on your website, or people go X, Y, Z. I don't know. It just felt like a really strange decision because I think it was really done in response to that Mastodon or whatever the huge swaths of people are leaving to try and create network effect elsewhere. And I think what they've did to kind of mask that being an attack on a single event or a single idea that was kind of starting to take hold. They grouped a bunch
in together.
Let's chuck Facebook in there, let's chuck Instagram in there, and blah, blah, blah. Even though I think it was definitely that was the catalyst for it, I think, was that big, like, you know, huge accounts tweeting about, you can find me on this platform, this platform, this platform. And I'm sure it just feel like burned if you're, you know, spent a ton of money on this thing. And
yeah, completely. Well, and the one that happened pretty quickly was Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator.
I didn't know if that was real or not.
No, I think it was, because I remember clicking on his...
He's back now, right?
He's back probably, yeah. And unless I'm wrong, so someone correct me if I'm wrong in the comments on YouTube anyway. But I'm pretty sure I clicked the account, but I was also like in a haze at this point, so I'm not sure. So I'm pretty sure I clicked it and it went to... Someone had retweeted his, like, quote tweeted his thing, basically saying something along the lines of, that's the last straw, I'm going to this place. And then when you clicked on his profile, I definitely saw that it was banned. And again, we don't know what happened in between that time, if it was actually for that reason or if it was something got flagged and then they reinstated it later. Whatever it was, that kind of set off. And this was so many people I saw on my timeline who are very pro Elon Musk and pro Twitter's, you know, stuff that they're doing right now. Well, like, hey, this is not well thought out. And to be fair, it sounds like they've already reversed their decision, right? So I think Elon Musk basically said every big policy change is going to be voted on, which I also don't really agree with. Like, it just, you need to kind of like think it through. Like, you can't like let the masses decide, when also we've talked about bot problems. Like, it's not really like a very scientific way to do it, in my opinion. I get his sentiment there, but it seems like it just feels like very rash. And like, as much as I'm all for them iterating and like trying things out, like, I won't like, you know, say that's a bad thing overall, but it just seems like stuff like this, like, who did you speak to? Did you speak to anyone who would oppose this? Or is it just you've got a bunch of yes men around you who are just saying, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Like, F the competitor. And it's just like, yeah, you need some people there that are saying, hey, have you thought about this? And him to actually take into consideration some of those things. You know, at the same time, I do respect they reverse it very quickly as well. So to be fair, they are listening to a certain extent. I also have a sneaky feeling, like, you know, if you're thinking from Elon Musk's point of view, his experience of Twitter is like very, very unique, right? He's got like 100 million plus followers. He's one of the most famous people in the world. Is or was the richest man in the world. And so like what you are using Twitter for is obviously very different to a Jack Butcher, a Trung Phan, or even a regular Joe who's using it day to day. And so, again, I think that is a big part of, you know, product strategy, is having layers to understand, you know, the different segments of a user base and what they actually are there for. And I think it's just painting with a broad brush to say, anyone who's promoting stuff on there is bad for Twitter, because that's essentially what media is, right? Like, anyone who does an interview on any media channel, whether that's a podcast or back in the day TV or radio, all you're doing, you're an author and you're going to talk about random stuff, and then you're also going to talk about your book or whatever. So that's kind of like, it is a bit weird that they didn't figure that out. So yeah, anything else on the Twitter side before we move on? I guess we were going to transition to the Twitter Blue ideas, but anything else?
Yeah, I think that, like, that again, even going into these ideas, a decision like that has been able to be made is like, it weakens my belief that like the direction of the product is like, would be open to even some of the things we're talking about, because I think this idea of like value being captured solely on Twitter is not, you can't really accomplish that by like whack-a-mole. You know, you have to just build a better product. And I think that like, that was just a signal that's like, we don't really have any ideas, you know? We're going to try and win by like shutting all these doors off instead of just building something great. Right? Yeah, and I don't think it's necessary. Like, you have them, like, I still believe it's like the most valuable network in the world, just as a function of like the types of people that use it, the amount of influence, like how it moves markets. You don't really hear about, like, they're not pulling up Instagram posts on CNBC, you know? Maybe that's not the perfect example, but like the most prominent narratives that move markets that are like quoted in political discussions, except like in Congress, right? It's like, you tweeted this. Here's a printout of a tweet going up in a like congressional hearing. It's an incredibly powerful network, and also obviously runs counter to the narrative that went along with the acquisition in the first place. We're going to protect freedom of expression,
yeah,
et cetera,
that's a
et
great
cetera.
point. Yeah, if you're scared, essentially, because I think, to me, forget the policy, it's clear that sharing links in general is already not reaching the same number of people. So he talked about there's freedom of speech, not freedom of reach, right? So that to me is already in that same idea, right? Like if I put something out to a competitor platform or I put it to an external site, the incentive for Twitter is to keep you on the platform. So therefore we all accept already that it's just going to reach less people. I don't get why that needs to be changed that much. That's already kind of annoying. Like we already accept that as quite a flawed part of Twitter. Like, there's other platforms that you get still a bit better reach for external stuff. So it's just like, yeah, it's a little bit of a weird one. And again, I think, like you said, the incentives are not really being understood or being positioned to us, people who use the platform, where they're just saying, you know, if you're linking out, you're going to be punished so much that you could get banned. That is a very harsh punishment for linking to a competitor. So anyway, yeah, I think that's probably enough. But yeah, do you have another thought on that before we move on?
No, that's great. I think that wraps it up.
So yeah, I guess it moves us into the ideas part. So you were texting with me and Trung about, you know, we're talking about this for a few weeks. Like Twitter Blue is a subscription service. You pay $8 a month. You get the blue check mark, I guess, which is not the same as it used to be. If you hover over your profile, it will say something like, this person is verified because they are paying for Twitter Blue or whatever. So it's not the same clout that you would get as being a verified person. So, but you had some cool ideas in our group chat about what Twitter Blue could include. And it's not saying these are realistic ideas, but just you're someone who's, you know, a power user of Twitter, knows it very well as a creator anyway, as a business person on there. So yeah, any ideas we want to share with our boy Elon?
Yeah. Let's do it. So, maybe I'll try and categorize a couple of them. The first one, or the one of the things I think I noticed when we started talking about it made me think about how some of the other massive social networks have grown. And the one point that we talked a little bit about was the LinkedIn feature where you can see who viewed your profile.
Yeah,
which
that was
my hypothesis is like, that is almost solely responsible for the growth of LinkedIn as a network, right? That little feature that maybe...
That creepy feature, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just, it taps into something that is incredibly human, where it's like, who's looking at my...
Yeah.
Who's like looking me up, who's like trying to figure out where I'm working, what I've been doing, where I've been, blah, blah, blah. And that idea has just massively, I think even the people posting stuff on LinkedIn, people thinking about like what they contribute there, I think has less to do with the growth of LinkedIn than that one feature. Like
that's a
you
good
log
point.
in and you see like, oh, these 10 people looked at your profile this week. I think that is what's actually moving the needle for your career, for the things that you're like, there's something about, I don't know. Anyway, that feature to me feels like almost an accidental thing that made the whole thing work, in the same way that, I think most of these things are identified in hindsight. So what would that look like if it was applied to Twitter? And
that's hilarious.
Can you imagine seeing how would it change the behavior of people? Because I think it would stop people visiting profiles. I think that
definitely, yeah.
The one thing on LinkedIn that does, you only visit a profile if you're conscious of that feature, if you're okay with that person knowing that you've visited that profile.
And you have to opt into it too, right? Because you can turn it off. So
if you turn it off, then nobody can see, and vice versa, right?
Which I think I've probably had it like that for a while. Because when I did it at some point, I think I had that, because it basically is if you're creeping more than being creeped on, basically.
The downside.
Right? Yeah. The downside is like, I looked at 12 people today and only one person came to me, so I don't care.
Yeah.
But no, that's that's such a sick growth hack that we haven't really seen in many other many other platforms. So was there anything like that on Facebook? I guess the closest was like people would remember when they would poke you. Yeah, the poke was close. That was good.
Poke was close, but it's also like, man, it's funny. I got a good story about this. When Celia and I started dating, like really early on, her dad looked at my LinkedIn profile.
That's so good. I think you told me that when we were in this bar in West Village with your missus too.
Yeah. So that was like, man, that's just like obviously.
That's when you knew it was the real deal. You were like, oh, serious, she told the dad.
Yeah.
That's so good,
man. That's a good like real anecdote of that feature in practice. And man, what were we talking about? If that was the case on Twitter, I think it would just change the way people moved around. So one of the suggestions was, if you're a subscriber, maybe you move around invisibly on Twitter, right? So you basically pay for the privilege to mode. Exactly be incognito. And if you're on the free tier, everybody can see what pages you're visiting, what profiles you're going on, all that stuff.
That's what that would set people. I mean, especially if it was retroactive. Can you imagine that? Because at least like if you said going forward, everything you're on, it will be very clear messaging.
Oh my god!
But imagine like people see all this stuff.
Just a ransom. Bilal has viewed your profile 9,000 times. Yeah.
That's
I think that would. I mean, that would be. I mean, I guess that's a pretty aggressive
People would
move.
pay for that for sure.
Yeah. Just to wipe it, but that might also just make people delete their accounts too. So who knows what they'll do with that? But what was the other thing I was going to say? You remember the Instagram stories when they launched that, where you could see who's viewed it? Did they have that on the fleets?
I think they still have it. They still have I don't know if they had what fleets were the stories of Twitter, right?
Fleets were the stories on Twitter, but I'm saying like I've seen people write about the effect that viewers of the story have had on the growth of the network. Like people will study the list of viewers of a story.
You can still see that on Instagram now if you swipe up. Yeah. So you're saying on Twitter, if they still had that, there would be a similar thing.
Just like even, to go to a less aggressive tier of like this person viewed your profile, like say a tweet has 100,000 impressions, how unbelievable would it be if there was a list of the 100,000 accounts or 50,000 accounts that viewed it twice, whatever it is, but it connects you to the like real
people
value of the network. It isn't this abstract number of
just a random number. Yeah, that's a great point.
It would be really crazy to see. Like, I think that would get people to contribute more. And I think that's, if I'm reading like, the literal instructions that, I think a couple of weeks ago, Elon tweeted out, he's like, more people need to contribute to the discussion, right? You want like say what you want to say and say it on Twitter. I think some of I wrote this a couple of weeks ago, a view count, like the TikTok thing on the tweet, I think that was maybe the TikTok killer feature, right? It's like, wow, 20,000 people have watched this thing. I'm going to keep making stuff. Versus like on Twitter, maybe 100 people see something and you don't get any feedback from that unless you're going into like the analytics and understanding that. Most people don't care about that. So I think if the goal is to get people to produce more feedback on how many people are seeing the thing, and the closer you can connect that to the actual reality of the list of people, the more you're going to contribute to the network. I think if people actually knew how many people and who they were reading their stuff or watching their stuff or whatever else, it would really I think encourage people to make more stuff and spend more time on that.
Well, that's definitely an interesting idea. I'm just thinking about it out loud here. So I guess right now people can like your tweet and you can see who's liked it. Though if you've got a big account, you're not necessarily manually going through all those, there's no sorting. I mean, maybe back in the day when there was TweetDeck and basically the Twitter APIs were open, people could and maybe have they opened them up again or something?
Yeah, what? I don't use TweetDeck, so I might be saying stuff that already is possible on here.
No, but maybe not viewed, because I guess the one thing is the difference between viewing your tweet versus liking. Liking, you had to initiate and say I like that. A view is like you just showed up in my feed. It doesn't necessarily show like an engaged view. Doesn't mean I liked your tweet, So that would be interesting to think about that in a bit more detail, because I'd say like if someone presses a button and likes it, if someone then gets to see that, it feels a bit fairer in a way, and there's more of a, what's the word? There's more qualification that that person actually likes your stuff.
Fair, yeah.
That's actually happened. And so when I was going hard with Creator Lab during the pandemic, I was putting out one a week, all these big people. And I remember just, you know, that was the first time I was really consistently putting stuff on Twitter. I haven't been doing it for a while since. But I remember just like getting a like from a big account that I knew, or I knew their name already. And that was like, oh, I used to send them a DM and like start chatting to them. And in fact, that's probably how we ended up chatting early on or something like that as well.
Yeah.
But you're right, like the value of the network, there is something in that idea of just the quality of the network. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's even, I mean, there's another app I use, really exposing myself here, but they sent me, they gave me like a free account. I can't actually remember the name of it, but it's like this contact manager app, right? It's called Clay, actually, Clay. And basically Clay, I don't know if you've heard of this or used it, but they actually have a feature where you basically link all your accounts like iMessage, LinkedIn, Twitter, all this stuff. And basically kind of like, it's not perfect, but it merges a lot of the people. So it would say Jack Butcher on Twitter is Jack Butcher in your text messages, and Jack Butcher from LinkedIn. And it will suggest, is this the same person? And it will like merge together. And then there's actually a feature there, which is like contacts in my address book who have more than 100K followers or more than 10K followers. And you can do custom searches like that. And maybe you can already do this in Twitter search. Maybe it's like an advanced Twitter search thing.
Nah, you can't, like, not really.
It's not very
good,
that's
another thing that I think is like...
Yeah, the search is not the best.
You know, maybe, and some of this stuff is just, again, you're coming at it from the perspective of someone who uses it to, like, as a integral
business
part
tool,
of running a business versus like, you know, somebody just going on there to like see the news or something.
Exactly.
But that's, again,
which is probably
Twitter
more
Blue,
people. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% more. And the Twitter Blue audience is definitely, you would presume they're either justifying that purchase as they get $8 worth of entertainment from there, or it's a business expense that, you know, the outcome far exceeds the $8 invested.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
And if the features don't lend themselves to either of those things, obviously no one's going to pay. I think the check mark thing, maybe there's a small number of people that pay for a check just to like piss people off. Or I think I've seen a lot of that, like, you know, just getting their revenge on the blue check. There's a bit of that, but I think that's like the people that were going to do that already did that on the first pass around.
The first round, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So now it becomes a game of like actually building some utility into it. Another thing we talked about was
go on.
I was just going to say the going into, I think Facebook used to do this where you could explore your relationship with a specific account.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So like you're saying, if I was like, which tweets of mine has Bilal interacted with, for example, and you go through and you start to like, it just creates a bit like a more nuanced relationship between you and person X, right? You understand them a little better based on the things
even
that
if
you're
think
doing
in a DM,
that resonate.
Like in that flow, right? Like if there was a way to click a button and see the history, like maybe one view is just a clean view of messages back and forth, which also should be way better in terms of searchability and stuff. It's just no way, like we use a WhatsApp group message crazy. And a Twitter DM, though we spend way more time on Twitter in general, and we end up having to use another platform because the search, like when we go to set up stuff for the pod, if I'm like, literally it happened just before this, I was like, oh, we talked about Twitter Blue ideas, and I searched, and it doesn't basically work on Twitter, and on
the search is a mess.
WhatsApp it does, and WhatsApp isn't perfect, but like at least that sort of stuff works quite easily. But yeah, just one thing on the Twitter, the checkmark thing. I think another thing is, if you know, that was another thing which I, again, respect. They tried something out, it didn't necessarily work the way they wanted it to, which can happen. But again, thinking through the details of that, like it felt like it was just like scratching the itch, but not really going deep and like figuring out like creating that incentive structure. And so if the incentive is just, oh, I'm going to get a tiny bit more clout because I've got a check mark, but then then what started happening is all these random people started creating, you know, George W. Bush verified account and writing these crazy tweets. And it was so difficult to decipher what was a real verified tweet and not, because that is what we actually used verified accounts for before. It was, oh, that's actually The Rock saying this crazy thing about his tequila brand, or like eating 17 chicken burgers on a Sunday or whatever. And that made it a much worse experience for a few weeks. Like, the experience of Twitter was stupid because all these I mean, it was also hilarious, right? So like, that's another part. But in terms of actually, you know, the mission of the company to be the town square, you were getting a lot of problematic stuff. Not in terms of annoying, like bad stuff. I'm just saying it wasn't easy to decipher what was real and what wasn't. And that's already a massive problem on all the social channels. So again, it just feels like an idea someone had, didn't really think through, put it out. People like, what you're doing. And the problem with social media companies, running a social media company, when you listen to the people who've done it before, is you only get a few chances to convince those people to keep coming back. It's different from a Tesla. As much, I think SpaceX and Tesla are way harder in most ways in terms of engineering and, you know, the crazy stuff they've done. But what's really difficult about Twitter is there's 300 million people, and by proxy with the press, you know, millions of people outside of that talking about what you're doing. Every time you do something, and there's already people out there wanting it to fail. Every time you do something wrong now, every 3 to 7 days, they're like getting on it. And now there's going to be so many people that just get convinced to not keep coming back, because like that, if all I read was that headline and I didn't read anything after about the external links, as someone who's primarily on there to share my podcast with people, that is something I'm like, all right, well, that's completely fine. They're allowed to do that, but there's no incentive for me anymore.
It's not conducive to my objectives.
Exactly. Yeah. Good use of the word conducive. You look proud of that one. It just flowed when it hit your head, I could tell.
Yeah,
but so that was an interesting one. I also think you shared a few ideas about monetization. I don't know if that was in the recent DM three-way chat or in the past, but you talked about YouTube style monetization. So let's talk a little bit about that, because essentially right now you can't really make money on Twitter directly from Twitter, right? There's no ad share of revenue. There's no like premium content like Snapchat had. You know, I forgot what they're called because I'm old, but they had that in the Discover page or whatever. They did deals with like Vice and all these different people, and they were getting paid. TikTok has a creator fund. YouTube has 45% revenue share, split with TrueView ads, and pays out more than any, platform pretty much. Instagram, I've forgotten what if they have anything. Do you know? Because you're pretty big on Instagram.
I think they were piloting something. I don't think anything's like properly off the ground. Like they were paying people like random amounts to upload reels. Paying
that
out
makes
bonuses
sense.
And stuff. But I don't think they have any like proper
rev share sort of thing.
Yeah.
And though they are at least thinking about it, right? Like they're doing the NFT thing. I think they've talked about doing some sort of rev share at some point.
They got the subscription thing now as well, Instagram. So you can subscribe and then you can have like private stories and blah, blah, blah.
Have you tried that?
Yeah, I got it running right now.
Do you feel like it's worth doing? Like, do many people subscribe or?
It's decent. You have to like, it gets a little bit like OnlyFans style, where you just have to like constantly be plugging it. And
Are you selling feet pics, mate?
Yeah, exactly. I think you have to do something, you have to do something aggressive to but it's more the like behind the scenes, unpolished, like unfiltered stuff that performs the best in those situations. But I think all the things we discussed, YouTube is the closest thing to like a free market of make compelling content, get paid, right? Or a lot of these other ventures, when they start out, it's like, how do you basically mediate a deal between this creator and this brand? And obviously that doesn't scale, right? Because you have to have people sitting there signing the contracts, like looking at the content before it goes out. And I know that's a big part of YouTube, right? The bin that we've referred to on the pod millions of times, this idea that brands get their stuff placed next to unsavory content at times. And that's, I think, an issue for obviously every social network. And I'm not adept enough to understand the nuance of it, but obviously Twitter would suffer from that same situation, right? If your brand is placed next to some tasteless commentary, or obviously everybody's seen the worst of Twitter.
A podcast about crazy stuff with three idiots don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, you don't want to be advertising against
it. Get a lot worse than that. But there's
no, but yeah, I get you.
There's some transparency into. I think the way I've been thinking about it is, if this whole idea is, or like the interest in the platform has grown with the amount of transparency that's being exhibited, maybe you could do that on the ad side, right? Where you say, this many advertisers spend this much money per day on Twitter, and we're committed to sending, 45% of that back to the people that make the content that people come to Twitter for. So I think make something as dynamic as the Twitter feed for the advertising data and the relationships between the attention you're creating and the value that Twitter is capturing from the work you're doing. And I think even YouTube, doesn't do that. I think it's more intuitive on YouTube because you
kind of... Jack, one sec, your video's completely gone off, mate. Do you want to just turn it off and on again? Oh, there you go. Back. Yeah, we don't need to edit that. I was fine. You were off for a few seconds.
I think YouTube is it's really intuitive because people get TV ads. I think that model has been around for so long. It's just pervasively understood. If I make something that people watch and then there's an advert in the middle of it, I understand why they would send me some cash. Yeah, I get that.
Makes sense.
I think Twitter is not as intuitive. I don't even think of it as YouTube type platform.
Yeah, it's not the same. You're right, because I think they positioned it around moments and stuff, and I think 80% of it was based on brand moments and stuff, brand type of ads, because we've talked about on the pod before. But there's direct response and brand ads. Google search is direct response. It's click my ad and buy something, sign up, whatever. YouTube is mostly brand as well, because you're trying to get awareness of your product or whatever. But do you know what? While you were just talking there, I'm just pulling this up. I'll share my screen for a hot second. Sorry, if you were in the middle of something, you can finish what you're saying.
No, I was going to say, I've started to see, I think, pre-roll on videos on Twitter as well. That's a huge part of their strategy, obviously, is get people to upload more video, because those ads are much more, they stand in the way between you and the thing you want to see, as opposed to in the feed, you can just get rid of that thing, right?
Yeah, I think completely.
There's a
you can't really miss the pre-roll if you're actually trying to watch something. Yeah,
right. So
that's why I pay for YouTube Premium, because
same here.
And it's the 5-second skip is actually way better than TV if you think about it, right? TV, you watch 23 minutes of a TV show, 7 minutes of ads. And on YouTube, though, nowadays it's getting pretty bad. Well, I don't fully know because I haven't had ads on there for a while. But you get 17 different ads in the middle of a long podcast, and you're okay, I'm going to pay for this. But
and the podcast is running ads as well inside the podcast.
Exactly. Then you got Athletic Greens and the mattress company on there, and I love Athletic Greens. Don't get me wrong, but this is a lot of monetization. Well, talking of which, I just want to share my screen really quickly. I saved this recently because I don't know if I sent you this, but it is someone sharing how much they make from TikTok. Can you see my screen? If anyone's running how much TikTok pays for 7.5 million views, 629,000 likes, and over 5,000 comments, it's $3.95, which is pretty wild, right? That is wild. I mean, just to put it,
Bilal, how much would it cost to get in front of that many people if you're paying
on
for
TikTok?
impressions?
I don't know the CPMs, but just to put that in perspective, so I'm going to stop sharing for a minute because I'm about to do public math here. But basically, someone could do the public math in the DMs because I need a calculator for this. But an average CPM CPM is cost per 1,000 impressions. It's basically how much does it cost to get in front of 1,000 people. That's kind of the standard across digital advertising, and a lot of the times that's what you'll be paying in. So Facebook, Instagram, I'm pretty sure TikTok are in that. Google and YouTube are actually slightly different, but you would normally pay between, let's say, $5 and $10. It really varies. It could be way higher. It could be way lower.
Napkin.
Yeah, but $5 for just 1,000 views. This guy had 7.5 million views. So on another place, so $4 your
and you
CPM.
got to pay tax on that, by the way.
Yeah,
so he's making about
really
$250.
Let me see if there's a CPM written in it to do the math for me. But no, I don't see it in there. But essentially, if you think of YouTube, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure the RPMs, which is the publisher side metric, which means if I'm a YouTube creator, how much did I make in CPM value? It's probably, like 5 as well. But if you're certain categories like finance, and you've seen all these crypto YouTubes, and we've monetization completely turned off, but
FTX.
our category is actually very high. You can make 25 sometimes in some places. And then on the podcast side, an average is $18 to $25. So you pay a little bit more premium to be in a podcast because you're going to get Jack Butcher talking about your product. And it's like radio. It's like there's a lot more engagement in long form content like that. So that is kind of how it works. The fact they're paying $4 for 7.5 million views is absolutely ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? So
I mean,
on
it's,
YouTube,
it's like insulting. Just don't do it. Like
just turn it off. What's the point?
And like that's just not going to do you any favors. Like the people who can make money on TikTok don't need the money.
Yeah.
In the same way that, like, that's the crazy thing about the imbalance in this. Like, I don't know, how many views does Kim Kardashian get on TikTok on every video? Probably more than 7 million, I would think.
Yeah,
100
completely.
million or whatever. So she's making, what, $100 a video? It just makes no sense.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, actually, sorry, by the way,
sense.
Because we like to fact check ourselves here, there is actually a very useful thing on the same screen I was presenting, so you can go back and pause if you want to read the full thing. But on Twitter nowadays it says like readers added context that thought people might want to know. The $3.95 was from that one day. Essentially, TikTok doesn't count views until later, so really they paid around $202. So just to be fair, that is closer to what it would be.
How big is TikTok now? Do you know? User
number of people. I mean, I think it's over 1 billion. It could, probably more.
Wow.
Massive. Wow. And then the other thing is, it says TikTok pays 0.0027 cents per view, just to give context around that.
0.000. Oh wow. All right.
Yeah. So anyway, we're kind of hitting time shortly anyway. But yeah, crazy.
We should compare that to music royalties too, like a
that would be
stream
interesting
on
Spotify side. All right, mate. Was there anything else on that before those were some cool ideas. Monetization for Twitter Blue. Elon, get your boy Jack Butcher involved if you guys want to get some more insights. But anything else on that before we wrap it up, mate?
This podcast was brought to you by Creator Lab, Visualize Value, and what's Strong's thing called? Saturday Post?
Sat Post and Barely.ai. Yeah, sponsored by. Yeah, we were talking. Didn't someone text you saying that
there's ad space. Shout out Warren. There's the 3-up display we got 2 little squares. In the bottom left and right. We're going to start putting some ads in there. Some talking heads. There
we go. Exactly. Well, anyway, listen, Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy holidays, whatever you're celebrating. Hope you get some time with your family. Have some good grub. And we'll have an episode for you, I think, on the 27th, the same day of the week, Wednesday. I think it's a Wednesday, as usual, the day after, a couple of days after Christmas. And we'll try our best to get you on early in the new year as well, like usual. And we appreciate you guys for rocking with us this year. It's been a great year for us on the NIA side. And we'll see you guys next week. All right, cheers.